Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're zooming in from around the world. We have focused this special Globinar on mostly US attendees, and so we really appreciate those that have both attended here live and also those of you who are watching this as a recording. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. We are all about trade. We believe in trade. We support trade. We love when people trade. It's good for the world. It's good for businesses to increase their success. And so today we have, perhaps for some of you, somewhat of a review. I would guess for most of you, this will be new information about the U.S. Trade and Development Agency. They're based in Washington, D.C. They're set up to support U.S. companies to export around the world, and they've got some really excellent programs, one of which is coming up this week that they'll be telling you about. So we have three expert speakers. I'm going to turn over the program to them right now. I just like to introduce each one of them and we'll get going. First, Todd Abrajano. He's the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Agency for USTDA, again, U.S. Trade and Development Agency. He has an extensive career with USTDA, and also before USTDA, he served as the director of the Office of White House Liaison at the U.S. Department of Commerce. So he has had significant government experience, and so welcome, Todd. He's also joined by Verinda Fike. That's an interesting word, interesting last name, perhaps the first time I've seen that. And definitely the combination I've never seen before. Verinda is the Indo Pacific Regional Director of USTDA. I'm going to guess that she's going to be sharing some information about the upcoming event, the special event that's here this week. And so Verinda, thank you for attending today, and we look forward to hearing more from you. And then finally, Diane Cabral. She's the White House Liaison and Director of Public Engagement of USTDA. She has been a collaborating person, a long-standing collaborating person with Global Chamber through the Making Global Local program, Global Chamber having joined when that program started. And so we really appreciate the collaboration. We're looking forward to the information today. Please type in your questions in the chat room as they develop, and we will be able to have about 15 minutes toward the end, 10 to 15 minutes for your questions. So Diane, I'll turn the program over to you. Thank you for your collaboration, and we look forward to learning more.
Great. Thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to the Global Chamber today, and I know you have franchises throughout the country, so we're really excited to spread the message throughout your network. By way of background, I've had the opportunity to work with the Global Chamber for the last few years, but I knew they've been a longstanding Making Global Local partner with the USTDA, so we're really excited about today's session. We thought it might be a little bit of a change, and maybe a nice one at that, to not spare the PowerPoint and just do a live interview today between Todd Abrajano and Verinda Fike. So we're going to kick off today's session with Todd Abrajano, the Chief Operating Officer and Head of Agency at USTDA. I'm excited he was able to join us today to go through some questions and provide a lot of the background about how USTDA goes about doing its work. And Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks for being with us today, and I'm going to kick off with our first question. Could you provide some background on USTDA as a federal government agency and its history, as well as some of the key partner agencies that USTDA works with, and then where we do our work around the world? I know that's a bit of a compound question, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Sure. Thanks, Diane. And Doug, thank you for the opportunity to speak to your members. Really appreciate being here. Diane, to answer your question, in terms of the history of the agency, U.S. Trade and Development Agency has been around since 1992, when we were formally set aside as an independent federal agency. Prior to that, we were sort of a small business unit within USAID. And as that business unit was stood up and sort of got its wheels in motion, I think the folks at USAID, as well as on the Hill, in terms of the members of Congress, realized that our particular mission and what we do in terms of export promotion really didn't fit within USAID. They're much more focused on humanitarian aid than economic development. And so Congress decided to spin us off into a independent federal agency, which we did in 1992. So we've been around for almost 30 years. And over the course of those 30 years, we've really done a lot of incredible work all over the globe. We have worked very closely in terms of the part of your question where you asked about key partners. We work very closely with the U.S. Department of Commerce and their domestic and U.S. and foreign commercial service. We work very closely with the State Department and the economic officers and political officers in embassies all across the world and in countries where we operate. With USAID, even though we originated within USAID, we still work with them. We've been working with USAID for several years on a project called Power Africa, where we have been helping to electrify sub-Saharan Africa and have been really beneficial in terms of providing electricity to millions of people all across the continent over the last several years. And so we partner with a lot of different agencies, including Transportation, Department of Transportation, including the FAA, the Transportation Security Administration, Department of Energy. We do a lot of work in energy, so it's an easy partnership with them as well. So we are one small but mighty agency, and we partner with a number of our cousins all across the U.S. government. In terms of where we work across the world, we are broken down into regions. As I mentioned, we've got a sub-Saharan African region where we're doing a lot of work. Verinda Fike, our colleague, is here today. She's our regional director for the Indo Pacific region. We have a Latin America and Caribbean region. And then our final region in terms of where we operate across the globe is our Middle East, Northern Africa, and Europe and Eurasia region. We do have a fifth business unit within our program, which we call our worldwide region. They focus on a number of different things that lie outside of a typical region. And they also focus on our global procurement initiative, which I think we may talk a little bit about later. But those are the places we work within each of those regions. We typically focus on around a half a dozen priority countries in each region. So on any given year, we're focused on about 24 different countries all over the world where we do the majority of our work.
Great, that's really helpful. I wanted to talk to you, I think, for our next question and just transition a bit to talk about some of the key project preparation tools that USTDA does whenever we do our work to help companies create jobs and to increase their exports.
Yeah, so we are what's considered the early stage project preparation arm of the US government. When we are working with the countries that we work with, and typically those countries are lower middle and middle income countries that are not quite to high income, but they're trying to work their way there. And what we do is we help them with their large scale infrastructure projects that they're looking to develop. And so we have a number of tools that we've developed over the last 3 decades in terms of how we get our mission accomplished and how we get the job done. Initially, the focus is on feasibility studies. We work with a number of entities, either public or private, in our partner countries. And as they're looking at those development projects, as those large scale infrastructure projects, we will partner with them and do a feasibility study to get those projects to ultimately bankability and to see that those projects can become implemented. And whether those projects are ultimately financed by our own Export-Import Bank of the United States or a handful of multilateral development banks or private sector funding, we really finance neutral from our end. We don't specify where the money has to come from for implementation. We just work on the early stage preparation to make sure that those projects are ultimately bankable. And so a lot of the work that we do is in feasibility studies. We also do a lot of technical assistance projects with our partner countries. And that technical assistance oftentimes looks at things like regulations and standards to be able to work with those countries and help them develop the laws and regulations that will allow for US companies, one, to be able to work in those countries, and two, to really set the stage for the projects that they're developing to bring in the best technology. And obviously, we think that U.S. companies and U.S. industry has some of the best technology available in the world. But we want to make sure that the countries are well prepared to be able to work closely with U.S. firms and develop the best possible, highest quality projects that they can. And so we do a lot of technical assistance work on that front. We also do some things that are called reverse trade missions. Now, typically, when you think of a trade mission, you think about maybe the Secretary of Commerce or a governor taking some of their highest profile company CEOs overseas to introduce them to high-level government officials or buyers in other countries. But really, for what we do on our reverse trade missions is we'll bring those buyers to the U.S. As those countries are thinking about the development projects that they're interested in pursuing, we can set up individualized reverse trade missions to bring those buyers or procurement officials to the United States, the people that are actually making the decisions on what to buy, and take them around to a number of different cities across the U.S., introduce them to the companies and the executives that are providing those types of technology solutions. And we found great success in our reverse trade missions. I hear story after story about deals getting consummated right after our reverse trade missions have ended. It's a great way to sell the United States, and it's a great way to sell our high quality projects and products. And so we do a lot of reverse trade missions. I'd say that probably accounts for about 25% of what we do on an annual basis. We do a lot of conferences and workshops. I think Verinda is probably going to talk about a conference that we've got coming up later on this week. But across the board, we also do pilot projects. If there's a technology that's proven here in the United States, but maybe hasn't been proven in a market overseas, we will partner with a U.S. firm and an entity that's interested in that particular type of technology, and we'll do a pilot project to see if that technology is actually provable in that market, and if so, if it's scalable. So we've got a handful of different tools that we utilize, and we're very happy with the success that we've been able to achieve with those tools over the course of the last 30 years. One way that we measure what we do is called our export multiplier. And what that means is for every dollar that USTDA invests in our programmatic spending, we see X amount of dollars in return in terms of US exports. On October 1st of this year, we just announced our newest export multiplier, which is 112. So for every dollar we invest, we see $112 in US exports. That kind of ROI is almost unseen in the US government. We're very proud of the fact that we've achieved that level of success.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. I'm always excited by that number. I wish my 401k could have that kind of multiplier as well.
I completely agree with you. I've been trying to figure out how I can invest in USTDA as well.
There you go. I wanted to talk to you just a bit about, hopefully folks now have a sense of who we are, where we're doing our work, and how we're doing our work, but to provide folks a sense of what work it is that we do, that we help to fan across the globe from our U.S. companies. So could you talk a little bit about our infrastructure sectors or key infrastructure sectors? And I know, Doug, I think the last time we talked, we had 3 key infrastructure sectors, and it's expanded. So we have 2 brand new ones. So I'll let Todd share the good news about that.
Great, thanks, Diane. So yes, for the majority of the time we've been in existence, USTDA focused on really 3 main sectors, which are energy, transportation, and telecommunications, or ICT. But over the last several years, we've started to branch out a bit and have done one-off projects with different countries all over the world in both agribusiness and healthcare. And over the last several years, we've seen that business and that work continue to grow. And about a year ago, during our annual strategic planning session, we decided to elevate both agribusiness and healthcare to be priority sectors within the agency as well. And so now, as you said, instead of 3, we have 5. But the vast majority of the work that we do lies within those 5 sectors. Within each one of those sectors, obviously, there's a number of different subsectors, and we have done work in almost all of those as well over the years. But within energy, we sort of talk about how we're an across-the-board agency in terms of what types of work we do in the energy sector. In November of 2017, we kicked off a U.S. gas exports initiative. We do a lot of work in the liquefied natural gas subsector. We do work in nuclear. We do work in typical petroleum and oil. But we also do a lot of work in renewables within the energy sector, a lot of focus on wind energy, a lot of focus on solar. And over the last several years, we've been pairing each of those with battery storage as well in a lot of the projects that we've done. And so within energy across the board, transportation, a lot of our work is focused on aviation, where we do, obviously we want to do the best we can for our US industry partners. So, in terms of selling airplanes, a lot of work there, but not just that. I mean, in terms of aviation safety, airport management, all the things, security, all the things that you think about within the aviation sector, we've focused on. We work in rail. Typically, we've done most of our work on the cargo side, but we've done some passenger rail work as well. Also done some work in ports within transportation. So a lot of work in the transportation sector. And then ICT, another big one for us. We work with our partner countries to develop data centers, a lot of smart cities projects, and obviously we work to build the network infrastructure, the backbones, really the now we're talking about 5G, but when it was 3G, a lot of work there, 4G, a lot of work there, just to really build the fiber and lay the fiber. USTDA partners with a lot of different entities to do that. Within healthcare and agribusiness, we've had some success over the last several years, which is why we elevated those sectors. But we're still at this point, doing a lot of research and trying to figure out what the best opportunities are within those sectors. So we're talking to a lot of companies in US industry to figure out where they may want to be working or what markets they want to be working in. Because ultimately TDA is a demand-driven agency. We don't go out and do projects just for the sake of doing projects. We want to do projects where, one, our partner countries are extremely interested in our help, and two, where US industry has or sees a need for our assistance. And so we really look at the demand and we go where the demand is.
Thanks for that, Todd. I think that's really helpful. I think one of the other big corner pieces of USTDA, we have a number of initiatives. Can you take just a few minutes to talk about some of the major initiatives that USTDA has? We have the Global Procurement Initiative, Access Africa. You mentioned the US Gas Infrastructure Initiative, and then I'll come back and ask you about our latest initiative.
Sure, thanks. As you mentioned, I briefly touched on a couple of them. I'll start with our US Gas Exports Initiative. As I said, back in November 17, we started this initiative, but over the last decade, we've really seen the United States become a power player in the gas sector. We are producing more gas than almost any other place in the world, and we certainly have been able to produce enough for our own domestic usage. And so with the oversupply, there's an obvious export opportunity to sell that liquefied natural gas overseas. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last several years is helping our partner countries figure out how they can build LNG regasification terminals, import terminals, to take advantage of the supply that we have and the low cost of LNG to be able to sell that overseas. So we're doing a lot of work in the LNG sector. When we were actually still traveling and doing international travel before COVID, one of the trips that I took was to Vietnam, where we signed a deal to help the country figure out where they wanted to site an LNG importation terminal in the southern part of the country. And we're doing those types of projects all over the globe. So that's been a great initiative for us. If anyone's interested in looking at that initiative further, they can check it out on our website, USTDA.gov. Also mentioned this one earlier, within our worldwide region is our Global Procurement Initiative, or GPI. I tell people this all the time, in terms of the most impactful work that we do at USTDA, I think our Global Procurement Initiative is right up there. And the reason why is, back in the early 2010s, we had a lot of companies that we typically would work with come to us and say, you know what, we're not even bidding on international tenders anymore because we just don't see ourselves being able to win. And so, a lot of what we do, our mission is US exports. We want to make sure that companies have the best chance to succeed in international tenders. And so we put our heads together at the agency to try to figure out a solution to that problem. And what we came up with was the Global Procurement Initiative. And what that does is it trains buyers, it trains procurement officials in our partner countries on how to look at procuring anything a little differently. Typically, a lot of procurement in foreign countries has been based on lowest cost for a very long time. But with US companies, obviously, we have a much more higher quality product. And typically, if you're looking at higher quality, you're also looking at higher cost. And so that's why our companies typically weren't winning, is because their bids were a little higher, or sometimes much higher than what the competition was. And so we're training procurement officials to look at not just low cost, but to look at best value overall. And so we're teaching them life cycle cost analysis. We're teaching them to look past just what the price is, but in terms of what's the life cycle look like? What's it going to cost to maintain the infrastructure that you're building? And once they price that out over the long term, they see that the US option is typically incredibly competitive and may just turn out to be the best option after all. And so we've trained thousands of procurement officials in the last 7 years. We started in 2013. And because of the work that we're doing through GPI, we're now seeing that companies are coming back to us and saying, not only are we competing now, but we're winning these bids. And so we're very proud of that fact. This year, we're looking to add another 6 countries to our list of partner countries, and we're expanding our GPI very rapidly. And I think it's one of the best things that we do at the agency. The last initiative that you mentioned, Access Africa, is one that we started about 1.5 years ago. As I mentioned earlier, we spent a number of years with USAID electrifying sub-Saharan Africa, and now we're taking that to the next level. We've got millions of people all across the continent that now have electricity, and it's helping their economy immensely. But we want to step that up a bit, and we think the next step just past electrification is being able to get people connected to the internet. It really helps economies take off like a rocket ship once you're connected to the internet and have the ability to access markets all over the world. And so through our Access Africa initiative, we've partnered with, I think now we're almost up to 20 different major corporations throughout the United States that focus on ICT and telecommunications and 5G, companies like Microsoft and Cisco and big names. And so we're partnering with them and looking at ways that we can help Africa become connected to the internet in ways that we've been able to help them connect to the electric grid. And so that's been a major focus of ours in Africa for about the last 18 months.
Yeah, I just can't even begin to imagine what it would be like right now to not be connected to the internet, especially in the midst of the pandemic, to just keep the wheels of progress moving. So that's definitely a key piece of the economic growth that we need to bring across the globe, especially to our partners. I know USTDA just launched its newest initiative that you announced at the recent XM conference last month, the Global Infrastructure Resiliency Initiative, or GIRI as we call it. Can you talk a little bit about the GIRI initiative and how folks might take advantage of this new opportunity?
Sure, thanks. So the GIRI initiative really came out of COVID. COVID has impacted, I think, everyone in the work that they do, no matter where you work or what your job is. There's been some impact because of COVID, especially for us in terms of figuring out how to do these large infrastructure projects that we typically are focused on. COVID has been a major impact. Typically, as I mentioned earlier, with our reverse trade missions, we'll bring people to the United States and have them travel to different cities. We can't do that anymore, so we're trying to figure out ways that we can do those on a virtual basis. But in terms of resiliency, I think the work that we do and have been doing for the last 3 decades is really fitting in with what we're seeing the needs are in terms of being resilient today. And so we're just taking a deeper focus now on making sure that the infrastructure that we're getting involved in is resilient infrastructure. Whether it's making sure that electric grids don't fail. Whether it's making sure that internet connectivity and those networks don't fail. There are a number of different ways that you can build resiliency into infrastructure. And I think obviously with COVID, it's a once in a 100-year situation. Most people will not see this more than once in a lifetime. And so we want to make sure that the infrastructure that we are building is resilient so that we don't have failures when man-made or natural disasters strike. And so we've had an incredible response to our initiative so far. We had an initial call for proposals that was open until October 19th, and that recently closed. But we had nearly 200 different proposals come in from all over the world. We're going through them right now, but there are some, I think, some really impactful projects that we're seeing come through there. You know, I think the one thing that I really want to stress in terms of all of these different initiatives are there are multiple ways for people to get involved with what we do at USTDA. And so, you know, if you're a company that hasn't been up to speed with what USTDA is or does up till now, there are, as I said, a number of ways to get involved. I would encourage you, if you are interested, to go to our website, USTDA.gov. We have a tab on our website that says Work with Us, and you can see exactly how you can get involved in all the different ways that you could get involved with the work that we do. So if there's interest there, that's a great way to check it out.
Yeah, now I'm going to just follow up on that for a moment, Todd. You mentioned the reverse trade missions, and I know we haven't been having them live recently, but one easy way for local businesses anywhere in the United States to get involved is every time USTDA does host a reverse trade mission, we almost always host what we call a business briefing inside that reverse trade mission. And that, so if the reverse trade mission is, say, 1 to 2 weeks long, we go through usually 3 to 4 cities and visit typically 4 to 5 companies per day with a foreign delegation. We set aside one of those days as the day to hold a business briefing, which I lovingly refer to, Todd's heard me say this a million times, as the shopping day. But it's a great opportunity for the foreign delegation to take to the mic and talk about exactly what it is that they're shopping for. What are the technologies that they're hoping to put into place? What are the key obstacles that they need a solution to? What are the milestones that they need to achieve? Any key objectives, perhaps budgetary information will be shared, as well as timelines. And this information is really critical because it's shared on a pre-procurement basis. So it's really kind of getting a preview into what that nation is looking for so that the US companies can respond most appropriately. So if you've not had an opportunity to participate in the past, you know, please consider participating in one of our upcoming business briefings. I feel chagrined as I say that because we don't have anything on the calendar. We have about, I don't know, 25 or 30 in the pipeline waiting to go as soon as we're cleared for bringing over foreign delegations again. But we are looking at making some of these sessions virtual for virtual participation, and we'll be announcing some new events soon. So I hope many of you will find an opportunity to have you and your stakeholders participate in some of the USTDA programs. Todd, I'm going to round it up and just kind of ask you a fun question. What has been one of your favorite experiences during your time at USTDA? I know you've traveled everywhere, so
yeah,
gotta narrow it down.
I've been all over the globe with the agency, but I will say there's a couple of things that we've done that were really standouts for me. One was traveling with Secretary Ross and the President's Advisory Committee on Doing Business in Africa in 2018, the summer of 2018. We went to 4 different countries with the rest of the entourage, and then we split off and did another country on the side. So ultimately, we ended up traveling to Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana. It was a 2-week trip, incredibly intense, traveled all over the continent, but it was a great way to really see the work that we do at USTDA and see it on the ground and see it really fully realized. You know, the impact of what we do at this agency not only has an impact for US firms, but it has a really large development impact for the citizens in the countries where we work. And to be able to see that in person is one of the greatest things about the job that I get to do every day. The second thing was from last year, was our first foray into sponsoring the Indo Pacific Business Forum. And the second one is coming up this week. So I was very excited. Last year, we hosted about 1,000 people in Bangkok. We had a number of different countries represented. We had US ambassadors or chiefs of mission from almost 20 countries there. And it was a great event. This year, we're doing it virtually for the most part, but it's also going to be held in small fashion live in Hanoi. It starts tomorrow through Wednesday here in the US, and Verinda, I think, is going to talk a little bit more about that, but that was an incredible event from last year.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time and just giving us a strong foundation in what we need to really know about USTDA and how USTDA does that work. With that, I'm going to ask Verinda Fike if she can join me up on screen. Verinda, as you heard from Doug during the introductions, Verinda is the regional director for the Indo Pacific region, but she also happens to be the industry sector lead for both of our new industry sectors, healthcare and agribusiness. So I'm really excited to have Verinda on the call with us today to talk through so many different areas of expertise that she brings to the table. Verinda, let me go ahead and just kick this off with a discussion about the Indo Pacific region. Can you talk a little bit about the geography of the Indo Pacific region and which nations are included whenever we say that, just so that we're working off of a common operating picture, and then talk a little bit more specifically about how you and your work at USTDA is able to support the administration's Indo-Pacific strategy.
Sure, Diane. Thanks for the opportunity to be here, and thanks to the Global Chamber for having us today. It's a pleasure to be here. So yes, for us, the Indo-Pacific region, it really starts all the way from Pakistan and working across the globe through India, through Southeast Asia, and then through the Pacific Islands as well. So it's a big swath of the globe, and it includes, over about 2/3 of the world's population. So certainly plenty of infrastructure projects to be focused on there. Our priority countries in the region are India, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. And with that, I will just say that we're also expanding into new markets. We've actually have really prioritized the Indo-Pacific region as an agency and have received double the funding from some transfer funds from the State Department, as well as increase our core funds within the agency to be doubling our funding capacity in the Indo-Pacific region, as well as putting more staff in the region as well. So while those are our priority countries, we, as Todd mentioned, we are very demand driven. And so we're looking for opportunities where US firms are headed. To give an example, this past year, we did the first project ever in Papua New Guinea, first project for us in the Pacific Islands as an agency. Similarly, in the South Asia side of the world, we're also supporting projects in Bangladesh, exploring Sri Lanka, and also looking at the Mekong region as well as an area of growth for us too. In terms of the Indo-Pacific strategy, we've been really well aligned with the US government-wide initiatives that are part of the Indo-Pacific strategy. These have been focused on digital connectivity and cybersecurity for one, the DCCP, which is a partnership that's a US government-wide initiative. Asia Edge is another one aimed at focused on encouraging the energy development of the markets where we work and energy security. And then the Infrastructure Transaction Advisory Network, or ITAN, which is looking at a sort of a whole of government approach to infrastructure. And these have really been perfectly aligned with USTDA's tools of infrastructure development. So we've been really pleased to see these initiatives and for USTDA to really be at the forefront of pushing these initiatives forward. As part of those efforts, we've also partnered with like-minded countries like Japan and Australia to level the playing field so that all firms have more access and ability to compete. Todd talked a lot about our global procurement initiative. Those countries have similar programs, and it's working together to make sure that procurement officials have access to make these key procurement decisions on a level playing field and looking at life cycle cost analysis. So I'll stop there and happy to take your next questions, Diane.
Great, thank you for that. I think kind of Todd alluded to this, and it's the topic that's on the top of mind for everybody at USTDA today. But can I ask you to talk a little bit about the Indo-Pacific Business Conference and what all that will be comprised of, and also just talk a little bit about the successes that came out of last year's conference as well. I think that'd be great.
Great. Yes, we're very excited about the Indo Pacific Business Forum, and I'm happy to put in the chat how you can sign up. It is a free event, so there's still time to sign up, and it's free. I definitely encourage you to do so. Things kick off, since this is a US audience, tomorrow evening, and are going to be tomorrow evening and then Wednesday evening, so Tuesday and Wednesday this week. We're very excited about the lineup that we have for the forum this year. Last year, we were really pleased having the event live in Bangkok, and this year it's primarily all virtual. There will be a smaller event happening in Hanoi, Vietnam, and then it's going to be a virtual event, and we're really pleased to have Secretary of State Pompeo, Secretary of Commerce Ross, Secretary of Energy, Bruyette, FAA Administrator Steve Dixon, as well as our head of agency, Todd, who's here with us today, and a number of CEOs across the region. We'll have the Deputy Prime Minister from Vietnam, the American Chamber of Commerce and other associations are a big part of this, the US ASEAN Business Council. And we're really thrilled to see the turnout. It's been some of the silver lining in COVID that you're able to get speakers if they're able to join from their living room. And so we're really pleased with the lineup. We have a series of panels that really cross a number of sectors: healthcare, energy, infrastructure, financing, aviation. So there's going to be something for everybody. Several ambassadors are also coming from the region, US ambassadors to various countries in the Indo-Pacific. And we have several countries participating as well. So looking forward to it. We expect to have about 2,000 participants, and it's still time to sign up, and encourage you all to participate.
Yeah, Verinda, I'd like to just kind of underscore that last point, that there is still time to sign up. That was one of the key things that Doug and I were looking at whenever we were planning out the webinar today, is to try and do it before the IPBF, since it really is USTDA's biggest kind of signature event of the year, and such a great opportunity for those that might just be dipping their toe in to look at international trade. It's a great opportunity to provide a purview across all of our industry sectors. So the time frame, I think, is a little bit odd, though. If you're a US company, the US times are from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. Is that right?
Eastern Standard Time, yes. If you're on the West Coast, it's a little easier.
Yeah, there you go. So, and just not to be confused, but the event will be taking place in person in Hanoi, Vietnam. But with the time change, since we're doing global trade here, that will be in Hanoi, Vietnam on the 28th and 29th for those that are attending in person. I just want to clarify that. I wanted to just ask you a little bit more about the Indo-Pacific Business Forum. How about for small companies? Do you see opportunities for small companies to participate in the forum and to participate in this industry sector, or this regional sector of the globe?
It's a great question. And I would say absolutely. I think the business forum is really for a company of any size. I think what would be really of interest to small companies is we actually have a resource guide that's on there. As soon as you register, it's on the landing page if you go to the Indo-Pacific Business Forum website. And that is really terrific too, because it gives a wide explanation of the current projects that are happening throughout the Indo-Pacific region, and how to gain more information about how you can access those opportunities. And we've had several small companies already reach out to, some of them are TDA's projects, some of them are not, but reach out to the points of contact to say, this is, I offer a solution that's exactly designed for what is being requested or what's being done in this city or this country, and how can I be involved? So I think just access alone to the resource guide is tremendously helpful. And then you'll also just be hearing about best practices about how to do business in the region, how to, you'll be hearing from both big and small companies of success stories and lessons learned. And so I think that there's really something for everybody if you're interested in signing up.
Great, thank you for that, Verinda. I think that's really helpful, and I hope a number of you will take the opportunity to join in and to sign up. I also wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit. I know that this is also part of the Indo-Pacific Business Forum, but I know we've just started off, as Todd alluded to, these two newest infrastructure sectors, those being healthcare and agribusiness. Can you talk a little bit about healthcare and what opportunities you see for U.S. companies for exports in the healthcare sector?
Sure. And although we recently elevated it to become a priority sector for us, we've actually done over 100 healthcare projects as an agency in a number of different markets. And we have focused on areas on telemedicine or electronic medical records, medical device and cancer treatment activities. We've also looked at the supply chain and looking at cold chain and how to ensure that the pharmaceuticals and vaccines are refrigerated and transported safely. We've looked at a number of standards related issues for hospitals, whether it's looking at Joint Commission International standards for getting accreditation for a hospital or moving in that direction, looking at patient safety models. And so there are really a number of opportunities available. I think certainly in light of COVID, we're certainly seeing an uptick in requests for our assistance across the board in healthcare. I think ICT is going to be a big part of that. A lot of what we're seeing is, how can cities prepare for the next pandemic or the next threat. And part of that is the emergency response system that has to be coordinated with the public health system as well. So certainly there's a number of opportunities that we see for US companies, and we only see the demand increasing.
Yeah. Speaking of opportunities, I just want to make sure everybody knew how to find us on the web. So if you go to USTDA.gov, we have a section across the top called Work With Us. And under there, you'll see our trade leads. And I really encourage everyone to take advantage of our trade leads. Right now, we have 3 trade leads that we have running. The Gambia Port of Banjul redevelopment, water management system in the Panama Canal, and then an RFP for new power generation capacity in South Africa. So that's just one way that all sizes of businesses can be taking a look at these opportunities, as well as for working on USTDA proposals or looking at ways to propose a project. So I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted that before I go back and ask Verinda one more question over here. So in terms of, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the energy sector. I know we have the Asia Edge program, that initiative that's across the government. Can you talk a little bit more about Asia Edge and what it means to the region, as well as for the energy sector?
Absolutely. So Asia Edge is really all about increasing the energy security for our partners in the region, and then making sure that US companies are a part of that solution too. And as Todd also alluded to, our work in the energy sector really runs the gamut from promoting LNG infrastructure in the markets where we work, whether it's developing designs for an LNG import terminal and the transport network of pipelines, taking it to the rest of the country, whether it's upgrading a DISCO's electricity grid and making it smarter, or creating a master plan for a national plan for electric distribution companies. And whether it's looking at battery storage technology for renewable energy sources and making sure that the battery storage piece is a part of the wind or solar solution that our partners are including. We've also looked at more of the regulatory analysis that is often a barrier, how to develop PPP frameworks, and other various models for financing. And so this has been a really key part, I would say, of this administration and our agency's work in the energy sector, and I think will likely continue in the next 2 years.
Sorry, my button is stuck here. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for that. I think there's plenty of opportunities to participate across the globe, across our sectors, even across the Indo Pacific region. I wanted to jump to our last question, then I see we're getting a couple of questions about the forum. So this will be our last question, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. If you have a question, please feel free to use the chat box that's there on the screen, and then we can funnel your questions through using the chat feature. Verinda, I just wanted to ask you to share, if you could, a recent success story that you've seen in the Indo Pacific region and how U.S. exports have, led to really making an impact and development goals, as well as an impact in a developing economy.
Sure. Well, there's a number of examples I could talk about. The one that is going to be in the news more, and it's already been in the news a bit, is our work with the Philippine telco, the largest telco in the Philippines, called PLDT, where we supported US company Cisco to help PLDT roll out their 5G technology and to make sure that that telco is 5G ready. This was through a training grant activity where we stood behind Cisco and said, if you choose the Cisco solution, we'll give you this additional amount of money in training grants. And they were able to beat out the Chinese competition in this case to win, a contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That is really such a great example of win-win, where we see US exports. This is US made technology that's going to be exported to the Philippines to help them with 5G. And at the same time is connecting, ensuring that the Philippines has connections in some of the more difficult places. As many of you know, the Philippines is a series of islands, thousands of islands, and to make sure that they have the connections that they need for their citizens. Really a great win-win example of our work that I think is worth highlighting here as well.
I know the competition in the telecommunications sector is pretty tight, and there's a lot of excitement about 5G, but also some concerns about the technologies that go into play there. I'm going to go ahead and open it up now for Q&A and see what's coming in through the chat box. I do see a question that came in from Doug, just the top question about, could you explain how the Indo-Pacific Forum works? It's 4 hours. What should attendees expect? And he just signed up. I hope others follow his example. Verinda, I'm going to turn that one over to you.
Sure. So you'll see on there is an agenda of the programming, and that will be recorded so you can watch at a later time as well. So if you don't want to stay up until midnight, just know that there's other times that you'll be able to watch that. But it will be very dynamic in the sense that there are multiple panels happening at the same time. At the beginning, there are a series of keynote speeches, and followed by the series of panels. And then there's also going to be a virtual network opportunity where there are several booths that are set up from US government agencies, from other private sector partners. So if you can just go pop into a virtual booth and talk to somebody and look at their materials, peruse. And so trying to create the sense of networking and a real conference given the situation that we're in. So those are the types of activities that will be there. There will be, several announcements for key signings and things like that as well.
Great. I'm looking, thank you for that. I think having been on the development end of that and looking at the website, it has been definitely a challenge to kind of wrap your mind around a virtual booth as opposed to a live booth. But I think there's also some key advantages, just I'll say this, to the conference being virtual, and that number one is the travel cost. There's absolutely no reason for someone to not be able to participate in this forum just because you're not going to have to pay to travel there. You don't have to take the time or spend the money and make that investment for the international travel. So I'm excited that a lot more people should be able to participate this year. It sounds like the attendance will probably more than double from what it did last year. So there should be lots of opportunities there. Let's see here. Somebody has asked a question about how best our US members can engage, and can members in other countries also participate in some way. So I think, Todd, I'm going to go ahead and invite you back to come back up on the screen. If you can help us answer this question, and Verinda, feel free to chime in. I think the question is, how can companies that are overseas, do we consider partners overseas? Doug, I know you have a number of global chamber partners that are also housed overseas. So just know that as you answer that question. Is that right?
Right, like for our people in Vietnam, as an example, are they allowed to attend, and how, maybe next time, who would they talk to? Is it someone from USTDA or somebody on the Vietnam government side?
Sure. So let me take a whack at that one. So, because of our mandate, our statutory language from Congress built us up for two reasons. One, to really move U.S. exports for U.S. industry, U.S. firms, and to do real development impact work in the partner countries where we do work. And so the vast majority of the work that we do is with U.S.-based firms. We do some work with companies that may not be what you would traditionally think of as U.S. companies, but if they have a U.S. presence, we can work with them as well. So if some of your member companies overseas fit that bill, we could certainly look at working with them. In terms of your membership, look, my wife was a longtime employee of the U.S. Chamber, so I'm very familiar with what chambers do and the fact that they are membership organizations. You want to provide the best value for money for your members as well. And so, what I will say is that if there are companies within the municipalities where you have chamber chapters that look like they could be good fits for USTDA and the type of work that we do, point them in our direction. Because I will say this, that, there are new and exciting and innovative technologies that are being developed in the United States every single day. And if we don't know about them as an agency, we can't help promote them on the projects that we're doing overseas. And so the best way for us to be able to really learn about those types of new technologies is through our partners here in the US, partners like the Global Chamber. And so I would encourage each of you and each of your chapters to really reach out to your members and see if there are synergies between what they're doing and what we're doing at USTDA, and if so, then point them in our direction. We are always looking for new partners and new technologies. And I put in the chat earlier the link to the Work With Us tab on our website. There's a subscribe button right there at the top where people can subscribe to our newsletters and trade announcements and things like that. And so you can see the opportunities that we have at USTDA whenever they become available if you sign up. There are always different types of opportunities, whether they be the reverse trade missions or opportunities to bid on a project that we're working with a foreign entity on. And so keeping up with those is a great way, not only for US companies to do business with us, but for the Global Chamber and your different chapters to keep track of what we're doing and pass those types of opportunities along to your membership as well.
Thank you for that, Todd. I think that's really helpful. I wanted to mention, we had a question that was asked earlier during our time. It's somewhat related, but does USTDA partner with other parts of the US government? And what about states or foreign governments or foreign businesses, and how do all those connections happen? So it's a pretty nested question. I can take the part about how USTDA may work with other states. And so USTDA works very closely through our Making Global Local program, and also with our individual governors on their offices of international trade. Some of them have statewide offices of economic development that happen to be a Making Global Local partner as a multiplier organization. I'll just say that our partners for the Making Global Local program are usually larger multiplier organizations like the Global Chamber. So we're looking to partner with these larger organizations that can help us reach their grassroots networks to share the events that we have coming, the opportunities that we have coming, the new initiatives and proposals or infrastructure sectors that we are working with. So on the domestic side, that's largely how our partnerships work. Todd, would you want to add anything on to that about how USTDA works with our foreign governments, or maybe mention something about our grant signings? That might be helpful.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, we're really a demand-driven agency, but we've developed over the last 3 decades great relationships in our partner countries and ministries all throughout governments. And so, we're kept very well aware of, what types of projects they're looking at doing and whether or not we fit in to those projects throughout the development cycle. When we learn about those projects, obviously, we want to pass those projects along to U.S. industry and the companies where we think we have technologies that could be helpful. And so, that's sort of how, typically the business cycle and the pipeline for new business works for us. People bring us ideas, whether it's private sector entities overseas or, the public sector ministries that we work with. Or as I mentioned earlier, with pilot projects, we could have a U.S. firm come to us and say, hey, we'd really like to test this in market X. Can you be helpful? And if it looks like that's something that we would be interested in doing, we certainly can partner and do pilot projects there. So there's lots of different ways. I am looking at the chat right now, and I see there's a question from Lucy. When would you suggest contacting USTDA, and when would you reach out to the U.S. Commercial Service? So, as I mentioned earlier, we're a little bit more restricted than the Commerce Department is in terms of where we can work. We're statutorily limited to developing countries. And so, a lot of high income countries where the Department of Commerce and the U.S. Commercial Service can work, we cannot. So look for that differentiation there. We don't do a lot of work in Western Europe, don't do any work in Canada. Anything that's typically considered high income, you won't necessarily find us there. So look for that as a differentiator. In terms of when should you contact USTDA, as I mentioned, if there is if there's a project that is out there based on going to our website or hearing about that through some other entity, that is something that we're working on, and you've got a partner company that you think might be a good fit, definitely reach out to us then. Additionally, if as Diane mentioned, with our reverse trade missions, we have these one-day business briefings. Look to reach out there as well. If you're signing up and you're getting information that we've got a reverse trade mission coming to your city, and you've got partner countries or even yourselves as the chamber representatives want to join our business briefings, you can sign up, and that's a great way to really figure out the best ways to work with us, not only for those particular projects, but for over the long term. So I hope that answers your question, Lucy. Let me know in the chat if it does or not.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just want to mention one more thing. I know I'm running a minute behind here to turn this back over to Doug, but I did want to mention that on November 10th, USTDA will be hosting a webinar and a call for initial proposals that's focusing on sub-Saharan Africa. So I did want to bring that to everyone's attention. I know that the Geary initiative just closed, but this is a great opportunity for those of you who are doing work in sub-Saharan Africa. So take a look at that. We're doing one on November 10th and another on November 12th. And also don't forget about the IPBF that we have coming up starting tomorrow evening. I want to thank both Todd and Verinda for their time today. And Doug, thank you so very much for hosting USTDA today and giving us the opportunity to have an aperture into your great network here with the Global Chamber. I turn it over to you.
We really appreciate it. Thank you, Diane. Thanks, Todd. Thanks very much to all three of you. Really appreciate the information. So the Indo Pacific Business Forum, it is tomorrow night. You can find it on the USTDA website, as has already been shown. If you get lost, you can go to the Global Chamber website. It's on our calendar as well. And check it out. And as Diane mentioned, I have signed up, and I look forward to hopefully connecting live rather than the recording, although it sounds like the recording will be available as well. Global Chamber, along with that, has about 10 events this week. And so we encourage you to continue to engage everywhere and be connected. We have, for instance, tomorrow as well, Mexico, Brazil connection where anybody is allowed to attend, and so please jump in and connect in. Somewhat aligned, although I think it's prior to the IBPF event. is the Softland Expo, which Global Chamber is part of as well. I know I have a presentation earlier in the day on the 27th. And so check that out. It's the opposite. It's mainly companies coming into the US. And so it's kind of it's a nice companion session for what we bring about mainly. We also have just very quickly some things for members to connect up this evening, a conversation about future of work in New York City at Global Chamber NYC. We have a Global Chamber Women Online Networking on the 28th. We have the Tel Aviv chapter meetup session. That's on the 29th. And then also on the 29th, we have a virtual dining event. This one is on French. So if you're doing business in France, check that out. You can have some good food. You can meet some good people. You can hopefully build some connections that will help you become more connected in France. Thank you again to everybody, Verinda, Todd, and Diane, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Doug.